Hello and welcome to Steel City Business Uncut. The first episode of every month is where we dig a little bit deeper with an amazing guest in a raw, honest, largely unedited conversation. I'm James Marriott, I'm your host. I run an audio marketing business in Sheffield which is called Sound Media, and on Steel City Business Uncut I'm joined by co-host Stephen Kenwright, who was co-founder of Rise at 7 before exiting in late 2022. The show is recorded at the awesome studios at The Curious at Castle House in the heart of Sheffield city centre. Right, let's do it. Hello and welcome to Steel City Business Uncut. I'm James. Our co-host Stephen is back. We've not scared you off yet.
No, not yet.
You're playing bad cop today. You're in charge of this episode.
I'm in charge, yeah.
Handing the reins to you.
Everyone should be worried.
I'm just going to kick back then. All right. Away you go.
Okay, so with us today we have Katy Powell. Katy is one of the founders of Bottled Imagination. And I know Katy from previous agency, Rise at 7. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to talk to Katy about, particularly, when I first met Katy, she'd applied to join Rise, and then the week after she joined the previous agency she'd been part of went into administration, so clearly they were missing her. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, because obviously two very different trajectories of agencies, but then I want to talk a whole lot about the world now, right? Because there's a whole load of different things that have been going on in the 18 months that I've been at home. Bottled Imagination, for those who aren't familiar, I think I'll let Katy kind of explain a little bit about what you are most known for.
Mm-hmm. So we are a creative digital PR agency. I think we are trying to do something a bit different, do good work that is a bit more creative and imaginative than the competition, hopefully.
So I think I want to jump straight into that kind of digital PR thread, because I think back in 2019 when Rise first started, it was the very beginning of the boom of digital PR. Certainly nothing new. I've worked in previous agencies that did digital PR and we didn't invent it. It'd been around for quite some time, but it really crossed the chasm into being a proper, well-respected discipline within SEO, especially in about 2019, 2020, when Rise at 7 came about and a bunch of other great agencies, Journey Further spring to mind, and several others like Impression and so on. And it seems to me that the world has kind of changed a little bit from that point, where a lot of different agencies are now capable of doing digital PR. Whether they're great at it or not is a different question, but there are more and more digital PR agencies springing up, and I'm curious to know what the experience is like going from that initial only game in town like Rise at 7, where I remember doing 7 pitches a week sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes not even pitching and just being given work because we were the digital PR agency, to now when there's a lot more competition. Like, how are you finding the market for digital PR at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting coming from Rise. Like you say, we were pitching every single day. There was a lot of it around. I think now there are more agencies doing it at quite, a high level, or talking about it a lot and very loudly. So I guess there is more competition. I do still feel, though, that a lot of agencies are doing the same work, and we've found when pitching that people are coming to us because we've said we're going to do something different, and we are being quite loud about that in terms of doing work that other agencies don't want to do or can't do, more bold, creative, campaign-led PR, which I think other agencies are shying away from a little bit. I think it is harder probably than it was at Rise in terms of getting cut through with pitching and that kind of thing, because there are more agencies doing it. But we've seen really good success with it so far. I think our pitch deck's really good. Not to blow our own trumpet, but I think it is good. And I think we've got quite a strong proposition, and that seems to be working.
I'd love to talk a little bit about that campaign-led approach, because when we first started Rise, I think these things are somewhat cyclical or ideological in a sense as well, where some people believe that campaign-led large creative stuff is the way to go, and some people think you should grind out a link at a time with a blog post. And the prevalent attitude at that time was very much the latter. It was data-driven. It was small-scale, consistent, do something every month to get a few links. And Rise and a few other agencies started doing much more kind of campaign-led stuff. But it seems like the majority of the industry has kind of moved away from that in the last year or two. So I'm curious to know like why Bottled Imagination is still finding the cut through with the campaigns.
Yeah. I mean, I think personally I am like campaigns through and through. That's my bag. That's what I prefer. My best campaigns I've ever done have been things like the Haribo ring, that kind of stuff that I loved working on, and I think it's what I'm best at. So I guess I'm biased in that situation. I think there is a place for reactive, and there's always going to be a place for reactive, but we really have put ourselves in the box of campaigns and leading with that, which there was a period where we thought, shit, why have we done this? Because they're actually really hard. And we kind of thought, oh my God, we've done our whole agency model around these campaigns. And actually, if you put all this budget into a campaign and it doesn't land, that is a problem. And, you know, you're really bigging yourself up to the client that you can do this, and, you know, it can be an issue. But we've done really well, I think, with the campaigns that we've put forward and that we're working on. I think there is still a place for both. Reactive's interesting because I think everybody's doing it now, to the point where journalists are, you know, pushing articles out that have got 7 brands in, all talking about the best colours to paint your wall, and your client is one of 10 in that. So I think there's a brand part to it as well. Like, you know, are you going to be part of the conversation, or are you going to be the conversation? I think it's something we've been talking to clients about quite a lot, and the campaign-led approach allows you to control the conversation and the client to actually be at the centre of it rather than just one of 10. I think for me, I think campaigns will continue to be a massive part of digital PR and PR. I think it's quite... People are talking about traditional PR and digital PR, and it's just PR for me. And I think the campaign-led approach will remain strong, and we'll keep doing that.
Do you think that traditional quote-unquote PR agencies are starting to get digital PR, or do you think it's still got a way to go?
I think it's still got a way to go, especially on the reporting side. We're coming up against traditional PRs quite often within pitches at the moment, which I think is a good thing. But as soon as we know that we are against a traditional PR agency, we know how to craft the pitch, because the reporting side to it is going to be often quite old-fashioned, AVE, those kind of metrics that we don't really talk about anymore, whereas we can come at it with a bit more of a different reporting kind of structure, which is that mixed with the creativity seems to be working really well, because we're able to say, yeah, we can do all these big stunts, we can do these big ideas, but we can actually report on it a lot better and show an impact on that. So yeah, I think they are starting to catch up, but I do think there's a way to go, and I think we're really trying to kind of capitalise on that.
I think it's interesting, like we've talked a little bit about how a lot of agencies are or have moved away from campaigns and really focused on the reactive and data-driven side of things again. But some agencies, Era and Resignal spring to mind, have kind of moved away from digital PR completely and are focusing on, I mean, more traditional SEO. And I'm wondering if you, to what extent you think links and PR, digital PR is still an essential or necessary part of getting organic results?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's something that we're asking ourselves all the time. You know, we've got clients coming to us saying, so what? What is the benefit of this? And also, you've built all these links, so what? So I think it is something that we need to kind of have an answer for. I think it will always remain a part of the organic results kind of trio of SEO. But I just think that there feels like there's this big untapped part of it that is the brand part of it, and actually, you know, we're using it for SEO, but also it needs to have like a brand part attached to it too. Otherwise, if everyone's reading these articles and you've got this like amazing vehicle to get your brand out there, but if you're just doing it to be, you know, get a backlink, fine. But also there is this whole part of it that I think is the where we're kind of going in terms of the work we're doing, the campaigns we're doing.
Mm-hmm. I'm conscious that we've gotten straight in on the digital PR being like a part of a discipline that's part of a discipline, right? So I'm definitely keen to understand a little bit more about, like, if we zoom out for a moment and think about the agency, because we've known each other for like 4 years now, and I hope you don't mind me saying, I hadn't seen you as an agency founder. That wasn't where I thought you were going to go next.
Yeah.
And, I'm curious to know, like, how that came about. Like, how did you make that decision?
Yeah. I think a lot of it was kind of like, why not? I hold myself, I've got very high standards for myself, and I think I can be my own worst enemy and biggest critic, I think. So probably starting an agency is the most like off-brand thing for me, because the validation part of it is so different and is something that I think I have actually really struggled with, in terms of, when you're an employee and you've got a manager and they're telling you, you're really good at this, you need to do this. Whereas now it's like, okay, no one's telling me this anymore. Like, it's got to come from myself, which for me is quite hard when I'm quite driven by that kind of thing. I think, obviously, I really enjoyed my time at Rise, and I've been there for a while. I was kind of thinking about next opportunities, and me, Luke, and James had worked together on quite a lot of big campaigns together, and we just sort of felt like it's maybe our time now to do this for ourselves. So, kind of launched it, and then I started worrying about launching it. I was like, shit, what have we just done? Didn't really have myself down to do this either, but here we are.
Is it how you thought it would be?
But yes.
Well, did you have any expectations? Did you have in your mind, like, oh, it's going to be like this and it's going to be like that and I'm going to be spending my time doing this?
Yeah. Yes and no. I think my experience of agencies before, obviously Rise was so fast growing, like through COVID, pitches left, right and centre. We grew to I think I was like the 8th person, and then we had like 120 or something when we left. So massive growth. Whereas Brass, they were going for like 35 years, so completely different. Like I was employee number 100 or something like that. But much different. So I've kind of seen two different ways of agencies running. So I kind of, I guess I didn't really know what to expect. I think I have been guilty of comparing us to Rise quite a lot in terms of the growth and that kind of thing, and that's quite hard to do. I'd say, yeah, it is different to what I probably imagined in terms of probably harder.
Yeah.
And the shift I've had to make in terms of the way I work and how I am with myself is probably bigger than what I anticipated.
That makes sense. All three of you are ex-Rise, aren't you? I mean, like that thing about comparing yourselves to the trajectory of Rise, it was always going to happen, wasn't it? That's completely natural. Yeah. In my head, I'm wondering, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because it gives you, it can be done. It gives you something to work towards. Yeah. But obviously, the world's changed a bit.
Yeah.
We've
got different goals.
The industry's changed. Yeah, different goals. There's going to be different opportunities with different clients. You're never going to be able to replicate anything really with a different business. Yeah. So those kind of board meetings where you sit down and look at those figures and. Whether you talk about it or each individually kind of thinking, Rise was doing better than this, or we're doing better than Rise on that. Like, is that? Do you view that as being a positive, or is it a hindrance?
I think it's good to look back, but I think we're very conscious that we're moving forward. We're doing something different. We've got different goals. The work's different. So try not to compare too much and kind of just concentrate on what we're doing and what we're good at.
Being yourselves, makes sense. Tell us a bit about some of the work that you've done then.
We've done some really exciting stuff. We did a campaign for a sports gambling client last year where we basically created a fake footballer and got people to try and place bets on this fake footballer kind of for gambling awareness, to basically prove that people just don't really research what they're betting on, and we kind of wanted to create something different around the gambling aware message, which was cool. We've just done one with our client Victorian Plumbing, where we looked at the decline of public loos across the UK. But we, rather than just stopping at like a data-led index, we're kind of trying to think that next step, what's more engaging than that? Because, an index, there's a place for an index, but we want to do something more fun. So we did a video with a David Attenborough impersonator. He's like talking about like, this is the last remaining public toilet in Newcastle kind of vibes, alongside a petition, alongside some WWE style like endangered species imagery and that kind of thing. So we're just trying to, I guess, think beyond the first way of doing something to, we're a startup, we've got to make a name for ourselves, we've got to have some interesting work to talk about, but also the clients are kind of looking for it, I think, because there are so many agencies doing the same thing at the moment and they're getting bored as well. So we're trying to do something different so that they're excited, the client's excited, because it's their job as well. Like, they want to enjoy their work and want to help them do that.
I think people in agencies can often forget that we are the fun part of clients' jobs.
Yeah.
Right? There's all this shit to deal with all day, every day, and we're supposed to bring the energy and bring the fun and make it easy for them to work with us so that they can, have one less thing to worry about. And I think that you can get a little bit bogged down in, your channel and your thought process and why doesn't this client get it, when actually they've got administrative and merchandising and all sorts of headaches.
Yeah, well, we did a campaign where we basically, because obviously AI is what everyone's talking about at the moment, and we did a campaign where we were like, okay, is AI coming for our jobs, basically? Worked with a client to see whether AI could do the job for us, but we made a Slack person that was ChatGPT essentially. We basically spoke to them through Slack. We got the clients involved. We had this group chat, and the clients took it really seriously. Like, one of them went on a right power trip against the AI, but it was really funny. But afterwards, they were like, "That was really fun," and they were saying, it was one of the best days at work that they had, and it was like, oh yeah, kind of what you're saying, Kenwright. Like, actually, it was a really fun part of their job, and we need to remember that. So we're really trying to, the client should really enjoy working with us and they should enjoy the work we're doing. And so I think that is something that we're really aware of.
How close is it for ChatGPT to be replacing PR exams?
I'm not worried right now. I say that and then it'll come from our jobs for it. I think I went to a talk about this recently, and it's like using it as a helpful assistant is the way that I can see it working, as opposed to literally replacing a person or a job. I think that's the best way of seeing it at the moment, and I might regret that I just said when we've got no agency, because AI is taking over in the next year.
I think there's always going to be a place for brilliance, and the best people are unlikely to get replaced in any field.
I think so too. Yeah.
And then there is a large number of people in any field who might well get replaced because they are kind of repeating a process, and if you can train a grad to do a process, maybe you can train an AI to do that. And if those people aren't progressing into their own creative thought and their own strategic worldview, then I think it probably does hold a worry for some people.
Yeah, we were talking about stages of grief the other day, like in the denial stage. Maybe that's where I am. Like, no, it's not coming for us.
Yeah, I remember when the internet was first a thing, and everyone said, that's it, there's going to be no more jobs, the internet will do everything. Like, no one really understood what it was. It was just this mysterious the internet that was it was just this entity that was going to do everything, and people wouldn't be necessary anymore, and people would have relationships with their computer, they wouldn't bother getting married anymore and stuff like that. And none of that's happened. The human race is quite robust. We'll find ways.
Yeah, we'll find out.
We'll find ways to make jobs for ourselves some way or another.
I am thinking back to your early days of Bottle Imagination because, and I know this is public information because I've seen you guys talking about it on LinkedIn and stuff, but when you first started the agency, you had contractual restrictions in place from previous employer preventing you from starting the agency, and I'm curious to know, firstly, what that's like on the other side of those contractual restrictions. Secondly, how you got away with it.
Okay. If you ask me, Luke, and James this question, it'll probably all give you very different answers. Luke would say we had 3 months off and it was really relaxing. I found it quite stressful, trying to navigate how we were going to do what we wanted to do. With the strict restrictions in place. Obviously, I think launching a PR agency is hard anyway, but launching it and not being able to talk about it as well, we were able to kind of silently trade for 3 months first, and that was difficult. And the prospect of having no income for 3 months because we actually can't talk about anything and how we're going to get any clients, and that kept me up at night. That was quite stressful for me. But I think we were lucky in that we'd built up quite a good kind of reputation for ourselves and our work previously. So we did manage to somehow sign a client when we didn't have a name, which is crazy, and they were crazy. But it worked, and we were able to sign 2 clients, which kind of basically made the agency, which was amazing. We were actually on holiday in Croatia when we found out that we'd won our first client, which was very boozy. Awesome. It was a challenge. I think the income thing was quite stressful for me. Anyway, I found it really stressful. But I think we kind of we couldn't change it. So we had the restrictions in place that we had in place, and we just worked hard silently until we could actually talk about it. Also, I think from a personal point of view, it was quite hard because everyone's really nosy. So we had a lot of people asking a lot of questions that we couldn't answer. So I was very cryptic, and I'm sorry to all my friends that I was very cryptic in what we could do at the beginning.
How worried were you about a court case?
It depended on the day. I mean, it was obviously there, the worry was there, but I don't want any drama, and it wasn't something that I was going to let happen if I could help it.
Because I'm now, I guess, like 15 months removed from my previous job, I have contractual restrictions in place preventing me from doing stuff as well, but mine are a little bit different because you had your restrictions within a contract of employment, right? So you have to sign a contract of employment if you want a job.
Yeah, of course.
And therefore, you're going to have to get another job afterwards. What that job looks like, whether it's an agency you own, whether it's a job working for someone else, you still have to earn an income. Mine's a little bit different because I signed a shareholders agreement, which no one makes you start a business. So my restrictions are, firstly, a good thing for me because I would have not taken enough time off and probably thought one day, I feel pretty good today, I'm going to do something, and jumped straight into something before I was ready to do so. But mine are much more legally enforceable. When you are kind of leaving a company you own, you have more concerns, I guess, about you're not just signing an agreement with the company, but you're signing an agreement with these specific people around the table with you. So it's quite interesting because I also, like, obviously I've seen from both sides with you guys leaving the company and getting occasional updates like what's happening with that. Is it going to be a court case? Is it not? Like what's happening? So it's really interesting being on both sides of the table and trying to understand. I do think agencies generally can be a little bit guilty of not taking legal restrictions as seriously as they should, and that's not just legal restrictions in terms of contracts of employment, but like NDAs and stuff like that. Like the amount of shit I see people posting on Twitter that they should not be posting.
Be,
I wonder how some people get away with some stuff.
Yeah, I just think it just takes one time for you to get it wrong, doesn't it? And then that's you.
I've always found this stuff really interesting because I just think what would actually happen then if someone, I guess it's breach of contract if you did it, and if they what do they take you to court for? Like to stop you from taking that job or to stop you from doing that thing, or do you have to pay them something? Like what would be the end game?
Likely a claim, like a financial claim is the most common, certainly in terms of like restrictions of setting up companies as a previous director of one, right? Because you could argue that any revenue I might be making now should be revenue that was going to another company, and therefore that's loss of revenue for that company, so that effectively be a financial claim in that kind of case. It's a little bit different when it comes to contracts of employment, I guess, and it's more problematic when you actually take clients, because there's a very specific literal that was worth X. We know it was worth X, it was written down on paper, therefore you have cost us X. So it tends to be, I think, financial, but I mean ultimately, especially when it comes to disputes in contracts of employment, like the previous employer is unlikely to win, but they could still bankrupt you just costs.
Just make your life a bit miserable as well.
If they
you really need to be working, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you put that clause in your staff's contracts?
Yeah. I think it would be silly not to.
Would you enforce it if they...
I don't know. I guess you have to do what you have to do, but I don't know. Hopefully I won't have
That's a horrible question, isn't it?
Yeah, that was quite a mean question.
It was a mean question. I'm supposed to be a good cop today.
Yeah, that was kind of... You're both bad cops.
Yeah, we'll redo it. You asked that question.
Yeah.
What's the dream? What's the vision?
Grow the business, but in a very sustainable way, in terms of I want to do good work and I want to be a good place to work. And I think if either of those things break, then that needs to be addressed rather than concentrating on grow. For me anyway, I think, if we got the agency to 30, 40 people, amazing. I'm not desperate to run an agency of 100 people, 200 people. I think the problems come with that. But I think, I want to be able to look back and think, yeah, we did that and we did this amazing work and we're a great employer and that kind of thing too. So that is the goal.
How do you know you're a great employer? Because you can look at the work.
It's a good question.
And you go, that work is good or it's not good.
Yeah.
But what measures do you have, or what kind of milestones do you have, I guess, that make you think we're on the right track when it comes to being a good place to work?
I mean, I guess we're not there yet, but staff retention would be a good thing. I think obviously in agency world, 2 years, people start looking for new jobs. If we can keep people because they want to be there, they're progressing well, they're enjoying their work, then that's a pretty good indicator of us doing a good job. We're doing things like staff surveys, that kind of thing, because I think, although it's quite hard to be anonymous when you're in like 5 people, but we are doing anonymous staff surveys, that kind of thing, just to get people's real thoughts. Because I think as well, like, it's really easy for us to put things in place because we think that would make us a good place to work, but it doesn't matter if, like, I remember my old agency had like a cycle to work scheme. No one rode a bike, so it's like it was a pointless perk. Yeah. So we're trying to like actually speak to the staff and work out what they actually want, and also what's going to benefit them. Because not everybody wants a gym membership. You need to actually speak to them and work out what they want and what's going to make them happy and their job easier. And because it is a job at the end of the day, so they need to enjoy it and give them the things that need to do that. But we're only, 18 months in now, so I think it will be more apparent as we grow and kind of been around a bit longer as well. Hopefully everyone will say that it's a good place to work.
It's a weird one, that, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, it all comes back to culture, doesn't it? And what kind of culture you build. But I find it fascinating in terms of what that sort of balance is between, like, as a leader, you can have an idea in your mind about the culture that you want, but you can't control the people that come to work for you. You can try and recruit the right people that you think are going to match that culture, but particularly as teams get bigger, the culture's driven, I guess, mostly by the people that are in the team. Like, they're such a big part of that, and if you get that wrong, this must have happened at like the number of people that you employed, somewhere along the line there must have been some of them that you just thought they were right, but they're the wrong person. And as much as you have an idea in your mind about the culture that you want to build, it becomes a beast of its own.
I think Rise was very specifically designed to have the culture that it had. Whether you think it was a good culture, whether it suited everyone in the business or not, is a different question, but it was meant that way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I do think that it generally modelled the behaviour that it wanted to see in people. That is not for everyone, right? It was a very individualistic agency that prized people being creative and going out and doing things for themselves, making stuff happen. And there's loads of perks to that. You get some brilliant flashes that, result in amazing campaigns, and, some really frankly brilliant people kind of thrive in that environment. But then it's quite hard to get the teams to work together because everyone is not necessarily out for themselves, but they are rewarded for doing things off their own back. So when you're designing a culture, you're being very deliberate about what you want, because there's a spectrum there. You kind of got to decide, is it most important that we have a team, or is it most important that someone steps up and carries the ball and scores or whatever? It's just been the Super Bowl, right? That's on my mind. But so it has to be designed deliberately. And, you're right, you can't control people, but they say culture is what happens when you're not watching. Yeah. And to do that, you've got to model the behaviours that you expect from people all the time. And then people generally, especially younger people and those who are kind of new to the workforce, kind of do understand pretty quickly to progress here or to succeed here. You do X, Y, and Z. These are the things that are normal. And I think, like, we've talked a little bit about things like personal brand and public speaking. Yeah. My first agency, very clearly you progressed by being a thought leader, by writing blog posts and by talking on stage. Yeah. And whether it was ever said, that's the truth about culture. It's not what the values are. It's not what's written down. It's like it's just the behaviours that are modelled and rewarded. I started doing that just because I'm like, well, clearly that's how I'm going to progress. And then obviously that kind of bled through into the next agency.
Yeah, because I felt like that at Rise. Like, whereas at Brass, I don't remember anyone doing a talk ever. So I found it very different coming to Rise and being like, oh, people do really push their personal brand and talk a lot. Okay, shit, I need to do that too. And the personal brand stuff doesn't come that naturally to me. Probably another reason why I wasn't going to set up an agency. But it doesn't come that naturally to me posting on LinkedIn every day. Like, I find it quite, I really have to put a conscious effort into think of what I'm going to talk about, and because I'm really conscious of just like blabbering into the void when everybody else is doing the same thing. So yeah, I've had some of the team say, do I need to be doing talks? I'm like, well, it's kind of up to you. And then I'm like, well, I guess I need to decide that and work out what actually, is our stance on that kind of personal brand stuff. I think it's a really interesting conversation. Yeah, because it's not natural to me, that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really interesting things about having 3 founders.
Yeah.
Right, because the more founders you have, the more of a broad senior team you have, the more diversity there is and not just in terms of things like gender, but like in terms of opinions on stuff.
Yeah.
How do you guys and girls go about really kind of deciding what is the opinion of the agency on stuff when you and Luke and James are all quite different people? I think.
Yeah, we're definitely different. Probably more so than why. You learn so much about each other every day. I think just talking a lot, like we do talk a lot about our experiences, what we want from the agency, what's gone well, what hasn't. In previous agencies, we've like all been in different workplaces, so we've kind of learned things from there. But I think just ultimately, I guess it's what we want out of the agency, and if it is, we want to all be a big team of thought leaders, okay, then we're going to need to push personal brand across everybody, but equally that doesn't work for some people, and I wouldn't want people who aren't into that to feel like they can't work in the agency just because they don't want to do talks. Like, that's fine. But I think having 3 of us is good and bad because there is so many opinions, but it does make deciding things a bit probably easier than 2, and definitely 1. I mean, I don't think I could do this by myself. I think it would be too difficult.
Do you outvote each other, or do you actually kind of come to how do you decide?
You have a buzzer on the desk with
basically anonymous vote. No, we haven't. There's not been very many things that we've literally had to be like yes, no. I think I can think of like a couple of things, but to be honest, most times we have all agreed. I think actually every time we've all agreed eventually when it's come down to sort of that vote situation. But I think more times than not we'll just try and talk it out, because I think I'll be so like hell-bent on one opinion, but then actually you speak to people and you think, actually, yeah, you've got a point, like you really have. So I think 3 is interesting, an interesting number in terms of those conversations. Yeah, definitely.
Did you have that dynamic kind of straight away? I guess what I'm asking, I mean, we've known each other for 33 minutes now. I feel like I can kind of draw on the fact that you co-found an agency with 2 guys. So you're the female in that dynamic, and I think agencies probably work differently to a lot of other businesses, and someone's gender is maybe completely irrelevant, but some people say that's quite a challenging dynamic to go into starting a business with 2 guys, who the impression I get from what you've talked about is the guys who probably always wanted to run an agency, whereas maybe you were a little bit more reluctant to kind of go into that.
I think I probably not really considered it. I guess it wasn't that I was like, no, I definitely never ever want to do that ever in my life. More just kind of like, I didn't really think, I don't know, I just sort of thought, oh, I can't do that. I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know.
Have there been any occasions where you've felt a little bit like, oh, I'm just sort of getting bulldozed along here?
No, I don't really let that happen. I don't think I'd let that happen. No, not really. I think we're all pretty good at talking about how we feel and getting our thoughts off our chests and that sort of stuff. So I haven't really found it a problem yet. Never know.
Do you ever have this feeling you've got something that at some point is going to be a disagreement, and you've kind of not talked about it yet, but you know that, because again, you've seen agencies kind of 35 years old, and a few years old and really growing quickly and real kind of mixture of things. So there's got to be some things that are coming up that you think we need to have an opinion on that. And are you concerned about anything that you think you probably will disagree on?
I guess there will ultimately be something in the future that we disagree on. I think that's just people. Like, we're not going to have the same opinions, and that is why it works well, because you discuss these things with each other. There'll always be like people stuff, and even things like financial goals, that kind of stuff. Like, I find those conversations quite hard in a way. Like, what, how much money do you want? I'm like, oh, I don't know, I don't have this number in my head, but other people do, and that's kind of quite interesting, and I've learned a lot about everyone through that kind of conversation. But I mean, I'm sure we'll ultimately fall out one day, but it'll be fine.
You might be stronger as a result of it, because I think we kind of talk about disagreements.
Yeah, I think it's
and
good.
Conflict is maybe like a step up from having a disagreement with someone.
Yeah.
But all that stuff as if it's just like a given that it's negative.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, like a dynamic, a working relationship sometimes can end up being stronger as a result of when you disagree about something, how you find a resolution to it, or what you learn about each other, or even just down to how you learn to be able to deal with a situation where you disagree. Because it would be like a fantasy world, wouldn't it, to imagine that you could start a business, particularly with two other people, probably just with one other person, but start a business with someone, start anything with anyone, and think we'll always agree on absolutely everything. We don't need to worry about what happens when we disagree on something, because it'll never happen. Of course it will. We're human. If we all thought exactly the same, the world would be a fucking boring place.
Yeah.
Like, we have to disagree. We have to have differences of opinion. What really matters is, how do you then deal with it? Yeah. That's surely the important bit.
Yeah, lots of talking.
Yeah, and not talking as well.
Well, yeah.
Right? Me and Carrie, my co-founder at Rise, we disagreed on probably 10 things a week, and 9 of those things I would never ever tell her that I disagreed with them. I'm just like, what's the worst that can happen here, right? I think I know what's going to happen in this situation. I don't know for sure, and also, even if it does happen, what's the damage? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So, and I always felt like being able to pick my battles, so to speak, meant that when there was one thing that I really disagreed with and I thought that was going to be problematic, it was much more comfortable to have a conversation about that and say, look, generally speaking, we get on with everything, right? We agree with everything, wink, wink, but this one thing I think is going to be a problem, and I felt that was a lot easier to get my point across when that was the case.
Yeah.
So I think there is always an element of picking your battle
100%.
with these things.
100%. Yeah, because otherwise you're going to just be like bickering all the time about potentially quite small things. We did have one argument about what song we were going to put on our launch video. That was probably the worst argument we've had so far.
Of all the things to fall out
Yeah,
about.
we did fall out about that.
Who won?
I won.
Well done.
What was the song?
The song isn't a song that anyone would know that we went with, but Luke wanted to go with the song from Willy Wonka, the Pure Imagination song.
Yes.
Yeah. No. I said no. I had images in my head of like tap dancing and stuff. I was like, this is not the vibe that we're going with, and that led to a bit of an argument. But we've moved on from that now.
Good. It's been 18 months.
Yeah.
now,
Yeah. It's launched now with a different song.
Well, you touched on something interesting earlier about how you left your previous employer and it went bust a week later.
Yeah,
went bust.
There's no correlation.
Dapper, isn't it? But
yeah, there's no correlation there. I don't think.
Did you know?
No, I was really junior in that first role. I was like marketing exec. I think my role was content exec. My role was essentially internal marketing for the agency. So I guess that role was actually so valuable to me now launching a business. I think at the time I kind of was like, it's my entry level role, I'll learn. But I really did spend a long time listening to people, and I worked really closely with the board there because of just the nature of my role. I was posting stuff on behalf of the agency. I needed to know all the news so that I could talk about it. So at the time, I think I just sort of took it for granted a little bit, but now I'm like, God, actually, I was really privy to quite a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't have known when I was like an exec. So no, I didn't know like anything was going to happen, obviously, because I wouldn't have even put two and two together, I don't think. But when it did go down, I was was shocked, like, especially because it was my first week at Rise and I was really excited about being in a new job, and then I felt awful because that had happened. But it's definitely been interesting to see that happen and, you know, talk to people about kind of why it did and then see Rise grow so quickly. It's been interesting, very different experiences.
I worked for the same business for more than 15 years and then left and went to work somewhere else. And about 2 months afterwards, it was acquired by a bigger group. And so everyone that worked there were all convinced they were going to lose their jobs. And it's really strange when you've been part of a business for so long and then you remove from it and something happens and you're kind of like, I have an opinion about this. I care about these people. But actually, it's not me anymore. That's not my life anymore. I found it quite sort of complex dealing with the emotions and the fact that, like, I was all right. It was fine. It didn't really affect me. I almost felt a little bit guilty for the fact that like I jumped ship just at the right time. Pure fluke more than anything else. But yeah, I found it quite a strange process.
I definitely did. I felt, I think guilty is. I literally was like, I would have lost my job this week, 100%. Which was strange, and especially I think because we were very loud at Rise, so I was quite conscious as well about not being too loud and too outwardly like, oh, everything's amazing, when like actually loads of my best friends, because they're still my best friends now, like I love them to death, and they'd all just lost their jobs. So it was really, I don't know, it was a complicated time.
I think one of my worst habits is, I think you can tell when something is in decline. I am always the voice of doom that this is going down in 6 months, and in fact it's got years to live. And we've talked a little bit about digital PR earlier, which I think is now in decline. The SEO industry as a whole is in decline, and you know, we've been part of various agencies over the year, where when I left my previous agency, I'm like, this has got 6 months to live, and it was 18. It was still going in that direction, but I think it's quite difficult, especially when you are external to it, to kind of understand the timelines of what's really happening with people. So it's interesting that you kind of got so much access to stuff at Brass, and didn't really, maybe it's not as obvious. Maybe I'm paranoid. That could be it.
I think also I was quite junior as my first agency job, so I guess I probably just didn't really know what to look for in a way. Whereas if that happened now, I'd be like, oh shit, of course, like this isn't good. But I think at the time I just didn't really know what I was kind of looking at. But I think I'm the same though. I think pessimistic is too strong, but I think I do often worry about the worst case situation as opposed to thinking about the best case one, which is, I think it's got its benefits of being that way, because you prepare for every single eventuality there is.
Do you ever feel like you're the naysayer in the founders relationship? You're
I would say so.
The spoil spot.
I would say I'm realistic. They might say that's not true. I think I do worry about the worst case scenario a lot. What if we continue doing this, we're going to lose that client. Like, let's not do that. Let's fix it way before they start complaining. If a client complains to me, I'm like, we've left it 6 weeks too late. Like, we could have solved that 6 weeks ago. Like, why did we not? So I would say I think that way, rather than being like, oh no, it's all going to be fine. Like, I've struggled to think like that sometimes. I think especially now, I was like that at Rise in terms of my work, but I think now that it's my agency, it's even probably worse, because I'm like, no, this is really bad if this happens. Or even though, like, we are doing well, so it's going well, but I think I do always think, but it could all change. Like, there's always a little niggle, whereas I think Luke and James probably maybe a bit more.
See, off the back of that, so you seem like someone that's quite analytical. You like to take that step back. You like to be quite considered. Think about things. Think about eventualities, not just bulldoze through things. I can relate to that. And this has started becoming a question that I ask a lot when we sit down to do these podcasts. And I jokingly in the last one said I feel a little bit like the interviewer at the end of a job interview asking the question about where do you want to be in 5 years or whatever. To what extent have you thought about the rest of your career and where you want to take things, and is this forever, or have you got other things that you think, I'd really like to do this? If you did think about Katy in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, what do you want to be doing?
That is a very good question. Something that I think about a lot, actually, because I think I don't really know. Like, I think this won't be forever. I think, we'll grow it and we'll see what happens. And then after that, I think because this was a very sort of, off-brand and not very me thing to do, I don't really know. I could do something completely random next, because I think this wasn't how, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, this isn't where I thought I would be now.
Okay.
I think I will probably stay within the realms of PR. Like, I really do enjoy it. I enjoy being creative. There is probably a bit of me that's like the sort of fulfillment part that I need to work out what that is. Like, I do want to do a job that helps people and that kind of stuff, and I think that's missing at the moment. I probably need to work out what that is, and when I'm like 80, or I'm probably still working when I'm 80, but when am I happy with my career and where it's gone? I think I'll need to figure that out. But I always see myself being in like a creative role and industry. But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I find it really like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing.
I suspect that you will decline to answer this question.
Okay.
But I'll ask it, because there's an interesting line somewhere in there where you said, we'll grow this for a few years and see what happens.
Yes.
Stephen, you've talked a few times before, been quite open about the fact that your plan with Rise was always get it to a certain point, grow and grow and grow and grow and sell. And ultimately, it was right for you to walk away from the business, because that was your aim, and you were very clear on that. What's yours, Katy?
Yeah.
Is this about the exit point? Is this about building and selling, or what do you want from it?
I think I'm not going to go into the whole business plan, but I think, like I said, I want to grow it and continue doing good work and being a good place to work. That is as much as I'm going to say.
That's a good answer.
I work in PR.
Brilliant. It said something and nothing in at exactly the same time. That was brilliant. The other thing that I've really been enjoying asking people on this podcast is, totally aside from everything else that we've talked about, I imagine you will have had a lot of conversations over the last however many months about the agency and what you're building and what you're doing and yourself and your challenges and things like that. But I'm really keen to give people an opportunity to talk about stuff that maybe they don't get asked about, or they don't get a chance to talk about, particularly in a public arena very much. So is there anything that you're really passionate about, be it work related, be it personal? It could be about, I don't know, football, music, TV, anything that you're really passionate about that you just never really get a chance to talk about.
Oh God, that is a good question. Yeah, I don't know really. I feel like this is actually probably part of the interesting, like, I guess not problem, but I have been so ingrained in my work, and I think probably everybody in agency world has been for so long, that I think I'm trying to figure that out a little bit. And the things that I was listening to a podcast about the other day, like through COVID, obviously everyone's just been working, and you've forgotten how to switch off and actually what you do enjoy doing as a person and you enjoy outside of work. So I think I'm on the voyage of discovery around that at the minute, because I'm trying to get back into things like the gym, and I used to dance a lot. Like, I actually thought I was going to do dance as a career before I went to uni.
Oh wow.
And then my mum told me not to do that, so I didn't do it. Which I never let her forget that she told me that. So that kind of stuff, like, I'm really trying to get back into at the moment, because I guess that is a passion. Yeah, something that I miss a lot.
Can you pinpoint a moment in your career when you realised that you'd given up your hobbies?
I mean, I guess it was probably mid-COVID, when I was like, I am just working all the time. Or if I'm not working, I'm thinking about work, as opposed to thinking about myself as a person that isn't anything to do with PR. And I think that is quite circumstantial in terms of COVID. You literally couldn't do anything else. And like, a lot of my best friends work within PR marketing agencies, so we talk about work a lot, and then you sometimes like, oh God, like, what are we even talking about? Like, who even are we? So yeah, I think probably mid-COVID. But I have always been very, I kind of measure myself on my work, and I have always been like that. So I was like at school, like, I always just, if I was doing well at school, I was doing well. And I think it's the same now. So I think, it's quite easy for me to slip into that mindset. So I have to I'm trying to work out now, like, let's start some new hobbies. Let's do some new things.
Professional dancer it's not out of the question. There's always,
no, absolutely no way.
You could always go back to it. We could form like a trio. We could do a dance troupe.
Yeah.
The Steel City Business Dancers.
Yeah,
I think it could work.
I mean, the Sugar Babes are always after new members. We could we could be the next.
Why not?
They're back to their original lineup, aren't they? Which was so they played Tramlines in Sheffield last summer. I mean, it was basically Tramlines in a swimming pool, but it was the original lineup. But some of the songs that they sang, they'd all individually left the band by that point. So the original Sugar Babes singing songs that weren't their songs, which was very strange. Katy, thank you for your time. It's been really good to chat to you, and the best of luck for the future of the agency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of Steel City Business. It's been really lovely to have you with us. Now, you know how this works. If you've enjoyed it and you want in on future episodes, then just follow us on your podcast app or on YouTube. The show is very active on LinkedIn. Just search for Steel City Business and come and connect with me as well while you're at it. Big thank you to The Curious for helping make this podcast happen. There's loads more about the show at steelcity.business, and you can get in touch by emailing James at steelcity.business. And hey, if you're in business in Sheffield, then, well, why not put yourself forward as a guest for a future episode? And of course, we're always open for a good chat about how audio marketing could work for your brand. Until next time, thanks for listening.